We are back from NOLA Motorsports Park, which is right next to New Orleans.
Is New Orleans any fun?
No disrespect to Angleton or Buttonwillow or whatever, New Orleans is one of the most fun places to be on the Lemons schedule. And once you finally get to the track, one of our regular teams, First Light Search Racing, is a bunch of Coast Guard dudes, so we get a helicopter flyover. Bottom line, if you're not racing at NOLA,
what are you even doing?
All right, it's a race. We have classes. There are class winners. Here they are. We had a great crew of judges, as we usually do at NOLA, including legendary Lemons racer and season champion Neil Losi, that's two-time season champion, and Sajeev Mehta, who is celebrating his birthday. A former stock Ford Taurus Racers party girl gave Sajeev this very festive party coat for the occasion. Now, Sajeev drove from Houston in his fine personal luxury coupe, this Lincoln Mark 8. The Lincoln turned 200,000 miles on the trip and immediately blew up. Happy birthday.
But the highlight of the judging crew was the return of Judge Phil after several years off. Judge Phil is scheduled for a few select races in 2024, so if you're lucky, you may be at a race where he dispenses his unique brand of Lemons justice. Like here at NOLA, where you had to take mug shots taken on black and white film with the plastic camera that came with the 2002 Chevy Venture Warner Brothers edition.
Gee, I don't get it, Doc.
Now, it is a race in 2024, which means it's time to check in on the Vannonball, which, as you know, is the Dodge Caravan attempting to run every single race on the 2024 schedule. Now, just a few weeks ago, it ran great at Thunder Hill, and here at NOLA, well, it blew up on the test day. But it got better. The team then spent hours pulling the entire motor and subframe, at which point they decided to not complete the motor swap, and they didn't turn a single lap.
No, that's not better.
And on the subject of disappointment, there was a lot of that in the world of third-gen F-bodies. First, you had Flaccid Chassis Racing. They're mainly known for experiencing endless heartbreak with their Pontiac G6 Lemons race car. But exactly a year ago, right here at NOLA, they debuted a new car, this third-gen Firebird. At the race last year, it immediately developed some kind of terminal overheating cylinder head gasket problem, caused the car to boil all of its water within a few seconds of startup. So naturally, we made fun of them, calling the car the world's fastest coffee maker. So at this race, they got into the spirit. They brought free coffee makers for every single Lemons staffer on site, and then they blew up their Firebird on test day.
Meanwhile, you had the M&M Racing Camaro, which also blew up an engine, and then they got to experience the adventure and joy of shopping for engines they found on Louisiana Facebook Marketplace.
He was like, crawfish? And I was like, what? No, an engine.
And then we had Full Circle German Auto in their E30 convertible, and they somehow managed to enter the track with a one-wheel electric skateboard in the back seat. Now, if you're thinking, isn't this something that should have been caught at Pit Out Driver Check? Our Pit Out people are trained to look for things like wristband being on, seatbelts being latched properly, driver gear head to toe, and not one-wheel electric skateboards loose in the back seat area. They drove a few laps and everything was just fine until the one-wheel skateboard managed to wedge itself into their fire system bottle, fully discharging the system into the cockpit. Now, I'm no F1 race manager, but I'm pretty sure this is on the list of things not to do in racing.
No, Mikey, no, Mikey, that was so not right.
As you may remember from the last MSR Houston wrap-up, this team brought a modern Mini Cooper with a professional vinyl wrap, featuring an insane clown posse juggalo motif. Well, they were back this time with a full juggalo riding on the top of their car, plus an entire second Mini Cooper, also with a juggalo theme, and a juggalo hatchet on the roof.
Whoop whoop! Whoop whoop!
And we want to give a quick shout out to another multi-car team, Half Fast Racing, although they've opted for something slightly more reliable than a modern Mini Cooper. And to boot, the team scored a free Miata shell at the end of this event, which maybe will be even more reliable yet.
Yeah, maybe.
Barely Legal was back. You may remember this team from running a suspiciously cheaty wide-body Thunderbird. Although this team was never really taking the whole competition thing that seriously, they still knew that that Thunderbird was maybe not fully in the Lemon spirit. So, for this race, they took the entire cheaty drivetrain out of the Bird and stuffed it into a real military surplus Chevy K5 Blazer. Hella sweet.
Our friends at Escape Velocity Racing were back in their Camry Solara and had an excellent Muppets theme. Now, weirdly, the jury is still out on whether the Solara is more or less reliable than their other Lemons car, which is a turbocharged Dodge Dart.
I gotta say, sometimes the simplest themes are the best, like this Honda Accord somewhat dressed up like a lawnmower with a Law and Order theme. Get it? Law and Order? Because instead of Law and Order, it's...
Former IOE winners Smokin' Hot Flashes were back with their stock 1975 Mercedes SL. Now, according to the team, they scored a replacement motor that isn't in it yet, but it is a Euro market version with higher compression and none of the USA 1970 smog crap. However, the smog motor that is currently in there completely refuses to die, so they just keep racing with that. This is an all-female team, and for this race they ran with just 2 drivers, finishing 36th out of 85 or so entries, and in doing that, they beat teams with BMWs, Miatas, V8 pony cars, and a Tesla-swapped RX-8 EV conversion, which we'll get to probably. I don't know if it's noteworthy or not.
Here's a cool team. It's Slow and Stupid Racing. It's a bunch of young engineers that work for NASA and or other space-related companies like Axiom and Intuitive Machines. They literally work on stuff that operates in space and on the moon. And with that kind of high-end engineering background, there's literally no car in existence that they couldn't figure out and make run perfect.
We had a rookie team called Swift Swifties Air Ass Tour. That's 2 races in a row where there's been a Taylor Swift element. We're not too old to be hip to the times.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
And one of my favorite themes is this one, Amateur Sketch Racing, which is based on the very early viral video of the Alabama Leprechaun.
Some people in the Crichton area of Mobile say a leprechaun is taking up residence in their neighborhood.
Who else in the leprechaun say yeah?
This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like.
And there wasn't too much new with this V6 Camaro for this race, although they did get it registered for the street.
Who else in the leprechaun say yeah?
Dallas Makerspace was back with their Nissan 240SX, and they added a mantra to their theme specifically for the NOLA race: shrimplify and add lightness. We had 2 cars at this race with hand controls, first of which was Ranger Road Motors and their Nissan Xterra, which ran great until it blew up. And the battle-scarred Motorsports Crown Vic also had hand controls and had drivers like Kara, who is an Air Force veteran. Now, since the Crown Vic didn't exactly run for much of the race, Kara did some moonlighting as a penalty judge. She especially enjoyed dispensing justice to some of her Marine Corps teammates by making them sing songs of increasing shamefulness.
Marine, you need to get out of your car, get on top, and sing the Marine Corps hymn.
Sing from the halls of Montezuma.
On to the awards. The special award went to a car we've been anticipating for a while. Eric hinted at it earlier. This is the Tesla-swapped EV-converted Mazda RX-8 from Team Stealth Bummer. This is the second race in a row with a new 2 Lemons electric vehicle. A few weeks ago at Thunder Hill, we had a completely stock 2018 Chevy Bolt, which admittedly was not $500, but easily crushed the Lemons EV distance record, even though that Chevy Bolt had AC, it had Apple CarPlay, and had to drive 10 minutes down the road to Walmart to recharge. You can watch the Thunder Hill wrap-up for the full story on that car.
Now, this car, unlike the Bolt, was definitely not stock, and probably also not $500, but like the Bolt,
It's a science experiment.
This is an 04 RX-8 with a motor from a Tesla Model S on the rear axle, which is actually swapped in from a C5 Corvette, and 4 Tesla Model 3 batteries, 2 under the hood and 2 behind the driver, designed to be hot swapped on pit lane during the race. They also had a team full of really smart engineers and a driver roster that included pro driver Randy Post. Now, NOLA Motorsports Park is one of the handful of forward-thinking facilities that has its own EV charging setup. But the Stealth Bummer opted to bring their own setup consisting of a homemade Tesla supercharger powered by a giant diesel generator. In other words, a setup that won't cause people on the internet to get in some kind of stupid flame war.
Well, okay.
Now, on paper, with everything turned up to the max, this thing would probably produce over 600 horsepower, which led most team members to be pretty optimistic about the team's chances of winning the race.
Mathematically, it's a 60% chance.
50-50, it's racing, you never know what's going to happen.
What do you think the chances are that this will take the overall win at this weekend's race?
Well, I'm really happy to be driving this car.
So, what happened in the race? Well, it turns out with everything cranked all the way up, they had 2 main problems. One, the car generated a huge amount of heat, with the driver having to monitor the stator temperature to avoid melting down the Model S motor. And 2, with everything turned up, it burned through its Model 3 batteries in just a couple of laps. So they had to run most of the race at a much lower power setting. On top of that, they blew some kind of super important fuse that limited their performance. They partially shorted out their homemade Tesla supercharger, and they had the usual Lemons racer problems like not completing their tech sheet, not being able to attach the quick release steering wheel, and racing for 5 laps with the handbrake on. As a result of all of that, they finished 67th overall out of 85, losing 2 things like the smoking hot flashes in their 75 Mercedes and a stock Camry that used to be a pizza delivery car.
All that aside, this is a huge accomplishment. They engineered this system, drivetrain swap, controls, charging system, battery swaps, pit stops, everything completely from scratch, and ran the 3rd fastest lap time of the entire race. EV racing, especially grassroots EV racing, is in its infancy, and to have this much success on the first time out is pretty incredible.
But we're still making fun of them, right?
Oh, hell yeah. We gave them the special award, the Got Smoked by a Chevy Bolt with AC and Apple CarPlay that had to go to the Walmart to charge trophy.
Judge's choice went to a long-running multi-car team, Low Speed, High Drag. They've raced for a long time in the Gulf region. They've got a bunch of cars, Crown Vic, Mustang, and this 2009 Focus. For this weekend, they were selling hot dogs with all of the proceeds going to Lemons of Love, and they're just generally good Lemons people. So what do they get for all that effort? Every single car in the field, more or less, repeatedly smashed into their Ford Focus.
No good deed goes unpunished.
I Got Screwed went to Death Wheel Motorsports and their Mazda pickup truck. Now, this team has been around for a long time as well, and their Mazda truck has had a long series of engine swaps in it, including the stock Mazda motor, a Kia Sportage upgrade, a Buick 3800, and now the current Chevy 4.3-liter V6, which, as we all know, is completely
indestructible.
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 Indestructible. Indestructible. Weirdly, it was not indestructible.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
This race had a lot of I Got Screwed candidates, including a few cars that ran exactly 0 laps, but Death Wheel got screwed because of the sheer amount of time they spent unsuccessfully trying to fix their truck. Now, here's the deal. If they'd just given up from the start, they would have been kicking back, eating boudin balls with those poor bastards from the Vandenball. But they kept at it, at one point having 2 separate engines on stands trying to come up with a combo of the 2 and the broken one that worked. The final nail in the coffin was attaching the front pulley to the replacement motor, only to find that due to some kind of horrible crankshaft issue, the timing was only 30 degrees off of what it should have been and was never going to work.
They're not indestructible.
Most of the time, the Heroic Fix trophy is given to a team that fixes 1 or maybe 2 major problems against all odds. This time, Heroic Fix was awarded to a team that fixed like 400 small problems to keep their car sort of running. Of course, I'm talking about Bad Backs and their Mad Max themed 77 Jaguar XJS. Interestingly, they didn't set out originally to do a Mad Max theme, But once they started actually building the car, every single element was like something straight out of the movie. So they decided to embrace it. And they added Max, and they added a War Boy, they added Lord Humongous, they added the Gulag Head from Beyond Thunderdome, and all of that.
Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror.
This Jag has a 5.4 V8 from a Ford van. Their original plan was to actually use a Triton V10 from Airport Shuttle. We really hope that we see that setup at some point. And they had an endless stream of little problems, but they were able to fix each one as it came up and keep the car sort of running, which, as you could probably guess just by looking at this thing, was deserving of the heroic fix.
Witness me!
The Halloween Meets Gasoline prize, which goes to the best themes / decorations / costumes, when you get right down to it, has very little to do with the car itself, which is a good thing in this case for Spin It to Win It, who didn't show up with a car at all. They had blown up their MR2 before the race, didn't have time to fix it, but still decided to drive all the way to NOLA from Houston with no race car with their street truck. They brought their truck through tech inspection just to dance and play tunes and then give the judges the truck to use as a judge-mobile. They also brought a big portable speaker and buckets-o crawfish for the Saturday night party. In the end, Halloween Meets Gasoline is really about the spirit of Lemons and the team that embodies it, and Spin It to Win It, as they usually do, define it. So very well done, guys.
Organizer's choice went to the Scuderia Rougarou Miata. We've touched on this car in a previous wrap-up. It's based on the legend of the Rougarou, which as far as we could tell is some kind of Cajun chupacabra / Bigfoot that eats children or whatever. They've been racing with this basic theme for a few years, which is great, but at this race they really stepped things up with new Rougarou costumes, Rougarou cologne, and a surprise bribe in their trunk, including of local beer, a fog machine, and live crawfish. To top it all off, they added a mini Dale and a new aero package.
Wood. What can't it do?
This message brought to you by the Wood Council.
The important takeaway from this is that you might not need a completely new theme to get yourself onto the Lemons Trophy podium. You might be able to just take what you've got and ratchet it up a few notches. We're just excited to see what Scuderia Rougarou comes up with next.
We've talked about Juggalo and Rougarou. They kind of sound similar. You get the Juggaroo, the Rougalo. The possibilities are endless, people. That brings us to the index of affluency, and the IOE goes to the most unexpectedly successful machine, and this time it went to a BMW, which almost never happens. This is the 79 320i of Schadenfreude Racing. Now, we've seen this car before. It does not have a BMW motor. It has a Mercedes 5-cylinder diesel.
Yes!
A 6-speed transmission out of a Nissan.
Yes!
An entirely different rear subframe suspension that's pulled out of a Thunderbird.
Yes!
And all of this stuff works incredibly well together.
Yes! Well!
As you are sitting here watching this on the internet, you obviously know already that the Mercedes diesel and Ford rear end are both
indestructible.
We already did that. Anyway, this car's had some difficulty staying running in its previous events. This race featured more of the same. On Sunday, they ran with a failed turbo and one remaining gear in their transmission, but that was enough for 25th place overall. Obviously the team's best ever finish. I say obviously because I didn't want to look it up. Who wants to look anything up?
I do.
But the highlight of the weekend for this team was earlier in the race when they were running second in Class C, just a few seconds behind the low-speed, high-drag Ford Focus. Their car crapped out and the Focus got hit again, and both cars need to be towed off. The BMW's tow truck passed the Focus's tow truck on the track, which was for position and the class lead. Now that's Lemons in a nutshell. So is this.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?